So welcome to today's edition of the Enforme Collaborative. My name is Kevin Fitzpatrick, and I have the privilege of serving as President and CEO of Enforme Interactive. And the Collaborative is a bi-weekly webinar series that we host on issues of common cause in the professional association world. And I think that certainly now with the challenges that we all face, the issues and the exchange of ideas is more important than ever. And today we're really grateful for having two remarkable thought leaders in the professional association space with us here today, Joanne Rang and David Schulman, who will be leading our discussions. And the topic of today is entitled, Today's Crisis Equals Tomorrow's Opportunity. And one of the things I'm so grateful for is that David and Joanne bring us a voice of optimism and a spirit of optimism to this discussion today. Now, I know that Joanne and David are well known to this community, but by way of background, let me just briefly introduce both David and Joanne. Now, Joanne Rang is Vice President and one of the founders of the Information Technology Advisory Group. And in that role, she serves as an advisor to various not-for-profit and for-profit entities. Ms. Rang has over 30 years of experience in the information technology arena, 26 with the not-for-profit organization sector. Joanne's expertise and knowledge are in many different disciplines, and based upon customer requirements, she analyzes their existing technology environment, reviews current and future business opportunities, assists in defining goals and strategies to support business operations. She also assists organizations in developing process models, realigning workflow with strategy, and advising on the cost-effective utilization of information technology. And we're again grateful for Joanne's generosity in sharing her experiences with us. We're also joined in by David Schulman, who is president of Associations Rewired. With over 30 years of experience in the business technology strategy, including work with over 80 associations. He's been preaching that digital strategy is the single greatest opportunity in the last century. And his preaching days are over, although once you hear him speak, I think you'll agree that he still has some preaching left in him. Because the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought the necessity of a digital strategy to the fore. It's not just about delivering your products and service digitally, it's about leveraging your hidden assets to deliver tools that actually improve the lives of your members. And that's really what it's all about for any of us. Prior to starting Associations Rewired, David built and sold 2 technology companies. So as you can readily tell, we have 2 very experienced industry executives and thought leaders with us today. And so let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, for those of you who have joined the webinar, please feel free to turn your cameras on if you wish. We would love to see your shining faces. Please feel free to use the chat feature on this system so that if you have questions you wish to pose or comments you wish to make, we'll dial those into our dialogue today. And we'll have time at the end for to turn on the mics and field your questions real time. So again, our session today is titled "Today's Crisis Equals Tomorrow's Opportunity," and I'm going to ask Joanne to weigh in on this issue first. Joanne, do you believe that the pandemic has really changed business practices forever?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on the session, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. It's an interesting time, and so the more we learn from each other and communicate, I think is important. But I do think this is an absolute game changer, and I think that many of us today have never experienced a revolutionary thing like this in our time before. And so, I believe, it's changed many business practices to say forever, I'm not, forever is a long time, so who knows? But, some of the things that it has done is it's given us a pause to really look at, the way we've done business before and the ways that we should think about making positive changes. And to give you a couple of examples, many times when I work with associations and I'm helping them really look at their strategy and changing things, it requires changes in perhaps their bylaws or the way they do things, which creates a need for a very slow sometimes and complex bureaucracy of getting things through and approved and moving the needle. And so sometimes they'll choose not to do certain things just because the time and effort that it's going to take them to move that needle is too long and hard. And I think what the coronavirus has done is it's forced people to realize that they had to do things instantly, right now. And so they didn't need that bureaucracy at all levels, right? And so I'm not saying that they need to get rid of it, but I think they need to be more nimble, and they need to look at ways and how the way they've made decisions in this very short period to change on a dime, how that can also be used as they go forward. So that's one. And then another one that I would say is, a lot of associations, in not every case, but in a lot of cases, they want to know what the other association has done. And this is so true in technology. And they'll say, well, what is the other association? What system did they pick? And how did they use that system? Or, because if it's good for them, it's going to be good for us. And when we step back and we look at the services we provide now as associations, they're going to be different depending on the association, because now we're going to have to look at what this pandemic has done to our members and their profession and their industry and create new services that help them, weather through this. So what may be good for a medical society is not necessarily going to be good for the potato grower society, right? And so I think, it's another time that we can't just follow the herd sometimes. Now we have to, be a leader and a leader in our own space.
Well, thanks, Joanne. That's great. David, let me pose the same question to you. Has the pandemic changed everything, and our business practices forever altered?
Well, I believe, and thanks for having me. I do believe, unlike Joanne, I do think it's safe to say that there are going to be some changes that are going to be at least for the foreseeable future, if not forever. So, for example, working from home. How many associations struggled with, just because we don't do it that way, letting their employees work from home? That combined with the cost of office space, employees getting about an hour or more back in their day from lack of commute time, I think those are overall positive changes. It builds in some flexibility and agility into the association business, and likely will cut some tremendous costs out of their budget, such as all that expensive real estate. The other positive thing that I've seen through this is it's become the point of no return for the Luddites. We have burned the ships. If you haven't embraced technology before, you're going to do it now, because before it appeared like something, it might help me do things faster, but I know my way, it's better. Now it's the only way work's going to get done. But to me, probably the biggest and most positive change that's taken place is brought about by this pandemic is that it's not only created a tolerance, but it's really created an outright hunger for innovation. All businesses start out with products and services that solve specific problems. Their customers, and yes, I'm going to use customers, folks, you know it. They're called your members and your exhibitors and your other stakeholders. But your customers are trying to do things and they face problems. And you set out and found products and services that solve those problems. The problem with all businesses, not just the association community, is that we tend to kind of get really myopic about that. And we have this singular focus. All right, we have these events, we have this content, we have this education. How can we make it better? And what we focus on, to a fault, is execution. How can we make it better, faster, cheaper? right? And we do that, unfortunately, at the expense of real innovation, because we've stopped looking at what is the outcome we're trying to achieve, and now locked in on how do we, the association, help our members. And so we've sort of lost sight of the forest, if you will, for the individual trees that become RPs. So what I was talking about before is that when we conflate this how and why, the problem is that while the why of what your customers are trying to do stays relatively constant, the how changes just as constantly. It changes all the time, these days mostly brought about by technology. So if you're in the business of making cameras and film and photo paper, digital cameras aren't on your radar. If you rent videos out of a storefront, streaming isn't on your radar. So the pandemic has thrown this into stark relief, because a lot of the options, a lot of the go-to solutions in the past are no longer on the table. We have to change it up. And businesses, associations in particular, have this, they develop antibodies that go out, ferret out, and find something new and different and kill it. And you all know what I'm talking about. Your association, staff, and seniority, there's too much risk associated. It's an old brain thing. There's too much risk associated with trying something new. And right now, that's what we're all about. So I love that new openness.
David, thank you for that. And I love the analogy of burning the ships, right? There is no, we're not sailing back home after this interval that we're in today. So Joanne, one of the things that I've really enjoyed in talking with you in the lead up to this webinar is your spirit of optimism. And you have not surrendered to the pessimism that we sometimes hear around associations, the pandemic, member value creation, et cetera. So what do you see in terms of new opportunities that give you this optimistic view?
Oh, I mean, I think if you sit back, there's lots of opportunities across the association, both external facing with their members and internal facing from an operations side. You know, if you, to take to David's point about the staffing models, right? I mean, traditionally associations only hired people that could work in their offices. And so therefore they're limited to the skill sets or the right people in the right job. But now we've seen people can work remotely effectively, and actually they work harder sometimes now than maybe they were in the office. And so I think, one, it gives the opportunity for associations to hire the right skill sets wherever they're located, and even right sourcing in their staffing models, right? Do you need to have somebody full-time, or can you do something part-time because you are doing it remotely? And so really have an opportunity to mix that up. I also think that, you know, those that don't own their buildings yet, right? You know, we know in the DC area, a lot of associations do own buildings, but it certainly makes a call for whether we need as much brick and mortar anymore for those associations that don't, right? And so again, you know, that's a less carbon footprint. We're giving better utilization of staff time versus commuting. I know in this DC area, it can take an hour and a half to 2 hours one way. Now you're giving people 4 hours back of their day. And so the quality of life and work balance has become so much better, right? Plus, not to mention the fact that we've given people a taste of working from home. So how many are going to want to come back, right? So we have to look at that dynamic. I also think that, you know, many associations didn't think that they could necessarily get into the global markets, right? It was almost kind of like an unreachable step. But as we continue to evolve and have our education and conferences and meetings and everything we do now available in a virtual world, because we're going to have to do that for the foreseeable future, then why can't we have more of a global reach in what we do? So again, thinking outside the box of who is our real audience now? Is it just the people within the US or North American border? So I think that's another opportunity. And then from, looking at the service perspective and the large meetings that we had, and everybody's, trying to migrate to the virtual format, we need to rethink, do we need three, like if you think about the conferences we've all gone to, they start on a Sunday, they end on a Wednesday, and we're all dead tired, right? Because you're up at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're going until 7, 8 o'clock at night, right? And so, and you had to do that, right? Because you only had so much time in the hotel, only so much time people could be away from their offices. And so do we need to structure our conferences the way we did in the past? Because you've often heard people say, well, there's so much, content in this, and I can only go to one agenda meeting at a time or one session. And so do we split it up and make it over multiple weeks or in different tracks? And, so how do we focus that, right? And then how can we change our registration rates and our cancellation policies so that we attract more people, right? And we get more people that might want to come to a few sessions, but maybe not all the sessions, right? Because a lot of those, the way that we built those registration and cancellation policies for any program or service was built around hotel room block constraints and food and beverage. Well, both of those are out the door. Right. So now we have a whole new way that we can, think about the way we run some of the events and things that we do. I also think about exhibit halls, and so, and when you look at, revenue sources for associations, their conference is usually one of the largest from a net revenue standpoint. And when you look at where that money comes from, it's not all from registration. It's from the exhibit, it's from the sponsorship, it's from all these ancillary other things as well. Well, if that revenue has gone away, how do we get it back? And so can we do, virtual exhibit halls? Can we do online poster sessions if we're a medical society who's trying to get their students, heard? And so what are, can we do social events and introduce people that have like topics that want to talk for short periods of time because they can't be sitting around at a bar in the hotel, right, or the convention lobby? So I think there's lots of opportunities to look at the way we work and the way we offer our services. And so, I mean, to me, this is a great positive time if you set aside all the tragedy of happening of the deaths and the sicknesses. But from a business perspective, I think we have some opportunities to be had.
It's wonderful, and I love the fact that your optimism is buttressed by facts, by real world evidence, and so I appreciate that. David, same question to you. You're an optimist as well, and what drives that optimism?
So I don't know if any of you have seen it, but there's been a meme going around on the web in the wake of the pandemic. And it's a short survey, and it says, who led the digital transformation in your company? Answer A is the CEO, B, the CTO, and C is COVID-19. So obviously we all know what the real answer is. But my point is that, and I've been espousing this, as you pointed out in the intro, for years to anybody who would listen, but the future has been clear for quite some time. The future of business is going to be digital. And if you ignore that at your own peril, and associations probably more so than any other business stand to gain by a digital strategy that's going to move their products and services online. So I think what's happened is, as usual, we come up with words to try and grab attention. And one of the buzz phrases that we have is digital transformation. And we have succeeded in terrorizing everybody with that phrase, because transformation sounds like a wholesale change of the way we do business. That's not what I'm pushing, and I believe anybody who's anybody in the digital transformation industry, that's not what they're pushing either. We are pushing you to try and think about how to do one small step at a time, to take products and services and assets you have and move them one at a time online. You have resources at your beck and call now. All those events people anybody that was focused on sponsorships and exhibitors, et cetera. We need to take the lens away that they were using all these years and give them this, in essence, kind of a play yard of tools that they can sit there and try things out. You can jumpstart the process by looking at hidden assets that you probably already have and you're not monetizing. There are a ton of associations out there that have membership directories that are just out there as a benefit for the members or the general public. A lot of associations in both professional and trade worlds have learned how to monetize that. And I've worked with several associations that are getting over $1 million a year by monetizing their membership directory. These are things that before you never even thought about. A job board is another such thing. Association of radiologists gets over $3 million a year from their job board every year, just monetizing it. You're not charging your members to use it. You may charge for upselling them on a premium placement, but everybody's on that job board. Everybody's on that member directory. There's supplier directories. There's surveys or individual survey questions. There are research tools that you can put out there extremely inexpensively and start monetizing. The idea is to build resilience in your organization by having as many different arrows in that digital quiver as possible, instead of just being down to events, education, and content. So that's, I'll leave it there.
The one other thing I'd like to add, Kevin, is this is also an opportunity to kill some of those pet projects or lost leaders, right? That associations have done for years and years and years because it's the way we've always done it, knowing full well that it was not necessarily something that was providing overall benefit to their members at all levels or whatever. And so now's the time when you look at those lost leaders, you can start, getting some of them off the books.
That's a great point. We have permission as perhaps never before.
That's right.
To innovate and to reconsider things that we've been doing perhaps for a very long time. So the three of us, we're experienced professionals. We've been through different economic cycles before, through the SARS episode a few years ago, and beyond. How do we begin to help early career individuals in their resilience as they're moving through, as we are collectively moving through this period of intense change and getting to this place of experimentation, of innovation, of reconsidering our member value proposition? How do we nurture resilience within our organizations? And David, I'll start with you on this one, if I may.
All right. So a couple of things. I mean, we're gonna see some massive change come out of this. We're already seeing it. And to put it bluntly, we're all basically going to go through about 5 years worth of innovation over the next 18 months, whether we like it or not, because that's the road to the future. The face-to-face world is going to be put on hold for the foreseeable future. Online communities are creating a bigger and bigger presence. Before, we didn't really, a lot of organizations haven't put a lot of thought, energy, or assets behind their online communities. They kind of like, it was a one and done thing. They set it up and they kind of forget about it. And everybody who's got an online community has discovered that you pretty much get out of it what you put into it. And it's really no different than your annual convention or any other meeting you put together. If you don't have the resources, teams, put behind driving the engagement of those online communities, that's where you need to be now. You haven't done it in the past, but now's the time. And now you've got experts in the room to help you do it and do it well. Think about your online webinars, workshops, education sessions, etc. that think of all those things we've all done. I don't know about you, but I've been on, forget the work side, plenty of Zoom calls a day, but I've signed up for classes and taken a lot of educational stuff and witnessed a lot of things like this because we're starved. We're hungry for this stuff. We want input. We're all stuck at home. We want to learn. We want to do better. This is an opportunity to avoid waiting to be filled, especially in your respective profession or industries with your association. So take advantage of that. Give them content, but don't just replicate the face-to-face stuff. You have to make it special. You have to make it engaging. It needs to be hands-on. It shouldn't be what we're doing right here, which is just talking at you, but at least we got rid of the PowerPoint. So I hope that's an improvement. If you recognize that the opportunity is really at hand and use this time to retool, rethink, reinvent your value proposition, you're going to come out of this pandemic a lot stronger than you went into it. Use the opportunity to identify the jobs that your various member segments are trying to do. Find out the problems that they face in doing those jobs, and then float your best ideas on how to solve those problems with your teams. And what's great about this is you can actually find out if it's monetizable without spending a dime. And to do that, what I recommend is you put your best ideas out there, and all you got to do is put little buttons up on various places in your website that says, we're thinking of building a research tool that can show you the best possible location for where you can open your next practice. If you're interested, click here. And that's all you need to do. Because from then on, you're just going to count the clicks between the competing ideas and balloon buttons you put out on your website, and the one that gets the most clicks, that's what you're going to build first. So.
Great advice. Great advice, David. Although I have to admit there was a wave of anxiety when you said to get rid of PowerPoint. I have to.
We have a 12-step for that.
We all have our crutches. Yeah. That might be mine. So, Joanne.
Yeah, the one thing that is part of the question that you posed, Kevin, maybe sit back and think for a second while David was answering, and that was, how do we engage the younger generation of people, and how does that change, perhaps what we're doing as professional associations or societies? And, I think in the past, because so many of these committee meetings where they're talking about, fundamental pieces of the business of their, whatever industry they're in, they're generally closed only, because they're in person and they're in a hotel and not everybody can participate. But now's an opportunity. If you're having these committee meetings and they're virtual, why can't you invite some of the younger people into those meetings to listen and give them an opportunity to provide feedback that you wouldn't have otherwise had, right? Because they're probably not in a position to be on a committee yet, right? They don't have the time and in with your association yet. And so their word really isn't being heard. So is this an opportunity to really say, wow, should we be engaging them, creating more mentorship as we, allow them to come into some of these meetings that they've never been privy to before, and allow them to evolve with us through this process? Because I think sometimes if we, only stick to the same people and asking the same people the same questions, we're always going to get the same answers, right? And so I think, that's something that, people should think about, is how do we really start engaging the younger population into, these questions, because they're going to be taking us to the next wave. Some of us are, baby boomers are ready to, head on out.
Right.
So,
And to that point, Joanne, if I may, the place you got to start is with these things. Because if you're not on there, you're not even on the radar.
Right.
Excellent. All excellent points. So I'd like to, we try to keep this at around 40 minutes or so, because we know everyone is busy, and we're a half hour into the session. it's gone very, very quickly. We could go for a lot longer, I'm sure, but let me just ask one final question and open it up then to any questions that folks might have. Turn your mics on and fire away. And while people are thinking about what questions they might want to ask, let me ask Joanne and David one final question, and that is if you had to give one piece of advice to an association executive today to help them think about how to best prepare their organizations for this tomorrow's opportunity, what would that one piece of advice be? David, I'm going to pick on you first.
All right. Oh, geez, I have so many, but one of my favorites is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It does not have to be perfect out of the gate. We're asking you to innovate. We're asking you to come up with some new ideas. And when I say that, it's an MVP, a minimum viable product. So you're going to put together just enough meat on the bone to allow people to be interested. Don't worry about all the bells and whistles and how good it could be if we only did this, that, and the other thing. Just get it out the door. Speed trumps overall perfection every day.
Joanne?
Yeah, I guess the one thing that I would caution is don't wait for things to go back to the old way of doing things, because it's not going to happen.
No.
And if you're waiting, you're already behind. If you haven't already moved the needle in these last few months, even a bit, like David said, then you're going to struggle going forward.
Yeah. And if I just want to circle back again, it's not a one and done.
Right.
This is the wave of the future. It's in my world, and I think mostly in Joanne's world, when she's not spending her time in HR and she's back on technology, we are proposing that it's like a digital garden. You need to seed it, feed it, weed it from now until something better than the internet comes along, because that's where all business is going to be done. That was
excellent points. Excellent points. Good. Let me open it up to folks who've had some comments come through on the chat service. But anyone want to turn on their mic and fire away?
Barbara, you certainly have a question for us, don't you?
Well, one question that comes in from Mike Fry is, how do we monetize member data and still be sensitive to GDPR and other the regulatory environment in which we operate?
You do it in summary. You de-identify the individual data and you do it with summary data. That data is valuable to whomever is interested in your members or your suppliers' industries. But if you present it in aggregate, you're not risking GDPR issues.
Yeah, and I would say I'm not so sure about the membership directory itself, because there are so many issues with GDPR. But I would say that there are opportunities for online buyer's guides that is not about individual data and personal data, but more about engaging the members with the supplier community within their industry, right? And so I do think that there's ways to monetize that. But again, I'm not so sure about the membership directory because of the GDPR issues.
Right, and you have to give them the ability to opt out, obviously, and also the ability to define what information about them you're going to surface and what you're not.
And Barbara's going to pop in as David invited, and I'm just going to say the member directory doesn't have to be what it used to be. There can be a new version of a member directories. It can be GDPR compliant and provide a service.
That's true.
Absolutely.
I don't know what that is, but we have to think about
it.
Well, I'm working with a few clients right now that have, they're professionals, they're medical professionals, and they want patients to come find them. And so they have essentially a glorified membership directory out there available by specialty, by need, by physical location, et cetera. And obviously you can opt out of that if your docket's full.
Right. I've definitely seen a lot of find a doctor or find a dentist or find a, XYZ, right? So those are definitely, because people are opting into that. They're looking, right.
And now that telehealth has moved to center stage, it's finding a doc is a whole different ball game now, right?
Right.
It's going to redefine how we portray that and how we position that.
Which, as the association, you could take it a step further and provide that telehealth foundation whereby they could actually not only find the doctor, but deliver the services through your portal.
Precisely.
Right. So remote.
Look how that would help young practitioners.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to live in the rural areas to serve the rural areas, right? Right. Or medical health.
Very good.
Wonderful. Thanks, Barbara.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Joanne and to David for your generosity with your wisdom and experience and your optimism about the future. Something that is perhaps in short supply in some quarters, but we find it in abundance here today on this webinar, and we thank you for that. So with that, I'll just say thank you, and I look forward to getting together with you on our next digital opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Have a great day, everybody.
See you soon, Joanne.
All right. Take care, dear.
Bye.